Welcome to Something to Say, where we bring voices from diverse backgrounds who will share their unique stories and perspectives on finding their passion and provide insights on how you can find yours. Join us as host Greg DeShields guides us through this enlightening journey.
Welcome to Something to Say podcast, a unique platform that amplifies the voices of individuals from various backgrounds sharing their passion. I'm your host, Greg DeShields, and I'm pleased to bring you another episode. So it's March, and we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, but we also bring you a special podcast interview with Mr. Paul Blakely and the Philadelphia, Ireland Brewery Collaboration Initiative. Paul is a three-time agency founder, branding expert, creative director, and fractional CMO. He's the founder of ST&D APRT, a specialized direct marketing agency built for local business owners and those working to help them succeed. Paul has 20 plus years of branding, marketing, and retail experience across Europe and the United States. He now focuses on building strategic brands for businesses on both sides of the Atlantic and helping local business owners access to professional marketing expertise without the agency price tag. Today, we are diving into an exciting international collaboration that brings the bold spirit of Irish craft brewing straight to American shores. And yes, right here to Philadelphia. We'll explore what the partnership means for craft beer lovers, for the Philadelphia market, and for the evolving story of Irish brewing on the global stage. Welcome, Paul. Paul, I am so excited to be able to do this podcast with you. I think you are our third international sort of podcast interview, and we've always enjoyed providing an opportunity for those who have had a chance to listen to our podcast, learn about things from a variety of different perspectives. But the fact that we have individuals like yourself who have just such a unique point of view, that the ability to hear from you today is going to be a pleasure. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Delighted to be here, Greg. Thank you.
So I've suggested that this is an interview that has an international flair. So where are you?
Well, I'm currently actually in Center City, Philadelphia. Would you believe? But I'm originally from Derry City and the Strabane region of the north of Ireland, in the northwest area of Ireland. So I travel back and forward a lot, but I've been lucky enough to be here for the snow. Not. Yeah, you rarely get those sort of snowfalls in Ireland. It was something to behold.
For us, it's been quite an interesting winter because we had one big snowfall and then a second one that followed just about a week and a half later. So I think we're all pretty much done with snow. We're ready to see the temperatures
I
change.
think so.
But I think what is pretty ironic is that when we began our podcast at Something to Say, we love to do what's called icebreakers. So I guess based on our conversation about snow, it makes sense to talk about an icebreaker. So I would like for our audience to have an opportunity to get to know you. So we're going to ask you a few questions, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into terms of your story, and then we'll talk about industry, and we'll get into the meat of things. So are you up for a few icebreaker questions?
Sure, fire away.
All right. So what's the best advice you've ever been given?
You know, that's an interesting one. There's so much bad advice I could probably give you first, but but I think, yeah, I always remember my grandfather and my uncles and my father used to, always say basically about procrastination. It was, you'll never plow a field by turning it over in your mind. So if I'm ever, like equivocating on anything, if I'm ever, pulling up a game on my phone rather than writing the email, then I always think of that. Like that always pops in there, niggling in the back of mind is you'll never plow a field, Paul, by turning it over in your mind. Just basically take action. That's probably the best.
Very cool. That's a unique phrase. I've not heard of that before, but
Very Irish. Very Irish.
But we are a sports town, so when it comes to playing the field, I'm sure.
Yeah, there you go. No. It's actually, you'll never plow a field.
Wow.
Plow. sorry, my accent there. So plow a field by turning it over in your mind. So, like, and during the act of plowing, you turn over
Yeah.
the
Okay.
sod.
Now I
And
understand.
so, yeah, so sorry, now I can actually clarify that. Yeah, so it's actually quite profound when you think about it. So you'll never plow a field by turning it over in your mind. It's
Very cool.
basically you've got to get on with it and get it
Get
done.
on with it. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's go a little bit deeper. So, if there was ever an autobiography written about you, what would the title of that autobiography be called?
That's a funny one, yeah. I always have I actually got this saying from W.B. Yeats, great Irish writer. It's in my it's on my computer, it's on my Instagram profile, and it says, being Irish, he had an abiding sense of tragedy, which sustained him through his temporary periods of joy. So I think that's such a profound statement that really sums up the Irish psyche. Is although we're sort of bubbly and outgoing, we're very like they can be very morose at times and and very wrapped up in ourselves.
Mhm.
So I think yeah, I think I would actually borrow that from him. So being Irish, it would be a long title, which is very Irish as well. The being Irish, he had an abiding sense of tragedy, which sustained him through his temporary periods of joys. An Paul Blakely, the autobiography, something like that.
Very cool. Well, it would be a title that would resonate, and
Yeah,
one that people would certainly want to remember.
yeah, it would certainly catch the no catch their eye on the bookshelf for sure.
Absolutely. Wow, I like that idea. All right, so here's another one. This was interesting because I thought about it a lot for myself. So, if you could rename yourself, what name would you pick?
Yeah, that's funny. I did that about 10 years ago or so. I was in New York and I was at Starbucks and like my name's Paul, obviously. So like the way you place your order, they'd
Mhm.
ask for your name. And then every time they called Paul or if you pull like six people, we sort of run up and try and get the same coffee. So then after that, I was sick of that. So then I decided when I was asked one day, I sort of spontaneously came up with Sebastian. Uh, and they wrote Sebastian on the cup.
Uh,
And then like a few minutes later, coffee for Sebastian, and I was the only one who went up and got it. So since then, actually, I've sort of adopted that alias for the likes of like Uber account, Lyft account, Uber Eats,
yeah.
because it's also a very good way to sort of trick the algorithm. Because if you use your correct name with your correct cell phone number,
Mhm.
then they can track you.
Yeah.
So again, that's my Irish paranoia. But if it's Sebastian with the number and then Paul with another number, it's a good way of deflecting the bots and keeping yourself somewhat anonymous. So yeah, so I've already done that, Greg, and it was Sebastian. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I've recently met someone, and their name is Sebastian.
Ah, nice.
So it turns out, though, that the alternate name that he likes to use is Bash. He
Bash.
yes.
Oh,
It's
cool.
kind of cool. Like, I mean, I think
Yeah.
Sebastian is cool, but Bash is really kind of cool.
Yeah,
So
but Bastion, is that it? So that's a sort of
yeah,
abbreviated. So I guess there could be Seb but Bash, yeah, Bastion. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
They're very French
I've
ones.
always, I mean, I love my name, and when I was born, Gregory Peck was a very popular
Yes, of course. Yeah.
actor. And,
Hmm.
my parents just liked that name from, Gregory the Great and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But I always wanted to, be called Robert.
Robert.
And yeah, and I couldn't understand why. So when I was traveling with my mother once, I mentioned to her, I said, "Oh, I really think if I had another name, I'd want to be called Robert." And she said, "Well, it's interesting because when you were small, we moved to the UK and my parents went there first, and we had to stay at home. And it turns out that we stayed with my uncle Robert for
Ah,
about 2 weeks, and I was just a small baby. So I'm assuming that being in their house and hearing
yeah.
the name must have stuck somehow.
It
But
rubbed off a little. Yeah, Robert. Yeah, yeah, Robert's a classic name. So it's a good name. You get Bobby and Bob, and there's
yes,
there's been many a great Robert has graced the path of history for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. So I may follow up on what you said and use Robert instead of Greg just as an exercise in a start.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes, do that.
I want to get a little bit more knowledge about your story, and it gives us a way of kind of peeling back the pulse story that much more. So, what's your top strategy for success?
Well, yeah, that plowing in the field thing is pretty much, I think, a ubiquitous strategy for success. If you're a doer and not a talker, then you tend to get on pretty well. But also specialization, I think, so critical. When I first moved to the US, I was here on a H-1B visa with a company in New York for a couple of years. Ended up buying that company off the owner. Um, and it was that, like get on with it type attitude that
Mhm,
sort of, made me rise to the sort of top of that sort of employee pool there.
mhm,
Uh, Whereas, like, there's lots of reasons to, say, hey, yeah, well, it can't be done because of this, or it's never been done because of that before.
mhm,
But I think honestly, if you have a creative mind, which you do, thankfully, you can really, like navigate, like complications and areas of complexity to
mhm,
actually come up with something quite unique and innovative.
mhm,
And I think if you can be an innovator, even at the smallest level, about even keeping time or like contacts with clients or whatever,
mhm,
like it doesn't have to be a major groundbreaking innovation.
mhm,
But if you continue to make little innovations, I think that really paves the way for a successful career
mhm.
in.
It's interesting as I've asked that question, there's so many different approaches that people have taken in terms of their strategy. And I interviewed one person and they actually say, I built my strategy per item that I'm trying to succeed. So,
Mhm.
so there was one person who actually said, I just try to maintain sanity in my house. If I can get that right, I've done something terrific. But I'm always interested in hearing how uh, individuals are able to apply these strategies that just help you to build upon one after another in order to achieve success. So, this is an interesting question. Someone had actually submitted it to us. And when I first read it, I thought that's kind of an odd one. But here it goes. So, who do you consider to be your biggest competitor?
Oh, well, I think we're all our own biggest competitor, right? Even as I get older, get a little white in the beard. Uh, And so, and I'm still competing with myself and that little niggling voice of insecurity that sort of resides within.
Mhm,
And, like, so I've been, trying all sorts of methodologies to sort of combat that and sort of get on top of it. But so mindfulness apps and certain techniques to sort of, turn down the noise
mhm,
in your head from your inner demon.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, I don't see like there's no really like if I was a athlete, for example,
mhm,
then I would have a much more intuitive or obvious answer for that. Hey, it's Jalen Hurts because I'm a quarterback, or it's like Lionel Messi because I'm a soccer player.
mhm,
But like honestly, I still fight with myself every day to ensure I keep plowing that field and to ensure that I get up and like go to the gym like when I'm meant to. That I like return those calls
mhm.
when I'm meant to. So I would say my greatest competitor still always has been and still remains myself.
There's a big coincidence because the last person I interviewed, that was exactly what he had said. And that has what's led him to take on greater and greater challenges, because
Yeah.
he wants to continuously compete with himself. I think for me, when I read this question, it was always about those who would be a naysayer about me or
Yeah.
the things that I do. And to that degree, it's about competing with them in order to accomplish success, achieve my goals, and that sort of thing. But it's interesting how that competitive component of the question is something that serves as a motivator for any individual as
Yeah.
to how you would apply that. So,
Yeah, that is a great sort of motivation. There are, like, particularly when you're in a startup, because I've been, successful in my agencies
mhm,
that I founded, and then I'm dealing, like in those agencies, I'm dealing with fellow CEOs,
mhm,
fellow like C-suite,
mhm,
like individuals in an organization. But then when you launch a new product, then I'm literally on the streets knocking on doors with
mhm,
people, making phone calls.
mhm.
So all the respect I earned at the corporate board level's all gone. It's just people who are skeptical. They don't know me. Like they're not interested. So there is that motivation, like when you get a no, hey, no, listen, go away. We don't want to hear from you.
Mhm,
To say no, I'll show you. And like in a year's time, when this is up and running, you'll be knocking on my door type thing. So yeah, I think that's a very natural human sort of emotion for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so one last question before we start to dive a little bit more into industry-related questions. So, what do you wish you knew before you started your career?
Oh, I think God, how hard it would be. I think when you come out of out of college, you're sort of like bright-eyed and you've got like you do all sorts of silly things like, hey, I joined a sommelier class. I want to learn about the chocolate notes in red wine and all that sort of silly stuff. Now I just know I don't care what the chocolate notes as long as it goes very well with my pasta. I'm completely happy.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I did think, yeah, it was definitely more challenging in terms of the human resistance,
Hmm.
like the resistance you'd meet from others, like to your point about like who your greatest competitor is.
Hmm.
Is there's a great deal of like sort of skepticism and sort of envy and sort of self-serving behaviors that I didn't think would exist in the professional
Hmm.
world. I thought everyone would be, hey, that's a great idea. Let's go. Let's like I love that. Let's do it. But there's quite a lot of not invented here
Hmm.
syndrome. So if they haven't invented it or they haven't considered it, or if an organization hasn't operated that way before, then they tend to shut it down, which can be really frustrating.
Hmm.
So if I had had a heads up on that's the way it was going to be, I would
Hmm.
have been able to navigate those earlier years a little bit more successfully and with a lot less stress, I think.
For me, it was interesting. I was talking about it as well because I was kind of at the tail end of the boomers, and
Hmm.
that generation was so connected with staying at organizations for a long time and kind of waiting
Hmm.
for the hierarchy of leadership to say, it's time for you to move on. And as I kind of look at how people, especially a younger generation, is able to navigate their careers, I wish I had known that you don't have to stay somewhere for 15 years or 20 years,
Yes.
because when I think of some of the length of time that I had spent in other places, I would have loved it to split it up and maybe have done half at that one and half
Mhm.
somewhere else. And if it was anything that I would have had the benefit of that much more experience, in different cultures and different organizations.
Yeah.
But back then it was all about, you're going to go work for one company and you'll be with them until you die or something like that.
It's very true, actually. It's actually more pronounced here in America, although I think because of the health insurance that's tied to employment.
Mm,
I think people, like I've met so many people who've had a great idea, and they're saying, "Oh, I'd love to, do this. How did you do, start your business or whatever?" I said, "No, listen, you gotta, you gotta, don't turn it over in your mind. Go and plow the fields."
mm,
And they're saying, nah, but I've got really good health insurance here. So they actually stay, like the corporate world does tend to lock people in with the
mm,
401k,
mm,
the contributions, and then the health insurance. And
mm,
I think that's something that's really tied people
mm,
to staying in jobs that they should have left
mm,
years ago,
mm,
is the benefits thing, which I think is a little expressly unique for the US, I think.
mm, mm. Interesting. All right, so let's talk industry stuff. So I know that for you, if we speak more broadly, you have a
Mhm.
good sense of the food and beverage industry, specifically around breweries and hospitality in general. So, with a very broad brush, I'd like to maybe ask you from your perspective, what are some of the common misconceptions that you see that you would like to clear up
My business or about the sector generally.
about the sector? Yes.
Again, like the sector is like they're very isolated. It's a broad sector. Like Philadelphia is a good example. Like it's a food town. It's a food city. And there's bars and food, like everywhere. But there's very little collaboration between the businesses, like within their particular neighborhoods, for example. Everyone gets up, they open their doors, and they hope people walk in
Mm,
every day. They may meet once a quarter with the local CDC or the Business Improvement District, might pull them together for something, but yeah, it still remains incredibly isolated, and that isolation of ownership
mm,
for business owners can be very, very, like corrosive
mm,
to their well-being, to their mental health, and to the success of the business.
mm,
So what I'm trying to do, like with the stand apart entity, is sort of remove that isolation of ownership and give them sort of mentors to speak with so they can bounce ideas off things. And then we want to connect businesses, like-minded businesses within particular neighborhoods as well to sort of collaborate just a little bit more often, share their problems,
Mm.
and then together, then they can sort of come up with solutions that will help provide greater value to their customers, which is always incredibly important. But also, it'll remove that isolation of ownership thing because there's a great deal of pride involved in small business ownership, particularly in the hospitality sector. So you will never hear a business owner tell you, like if you're a executive director of a CDC, for example, or a bid, and you ask them how are they doing, they're going to go, yeah, everything's going well,
Mm.
regardless if it's not going well. They they will not give up that sense of pride because they're deeply tied to the success of the business. And what I try and tell them is that, hey, you're the only business owner in the world who tries to do everything in a business. You're trying to do finances, you're trying to do marketing, you're trying to do products, you're trying to do HR, you're trying to do all those things. So all these successful businesses that you see in the world, they
Mm.
have an individual for all of those roles. So you need to give yourself a break. You need to prioritize what you're doing, and that can be better achieved in a sort of group setting with other people who are going through the same shared problems.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about the integration of innovation. We certainly are seeing it grow at an incredible rate here in the United States, but have there been any particular breakthroughs that have stood out to you in the sector or in business in general that you think is pretty exciting and is helping to move things along pretty great?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's always a slow evolution, really. Like I think when the likes of the POS systems, they Square and so on came in, that really helped businesses with their, like with their financial management. But those are like 10 and 15 years old now. Now everyone's trying to catch up with the whole hype around AI, which is like just nonsense, really. Like for a hospitality business, because you're still very much in the people pleasing business.
Mm.
So like it's I'm certainly one to one. They can utilize AI for different functions of a business, but it typically is only the more sophisticated businesses with multiple employees that can do that.
Mhm.
So with respect to innovations, they keep trying to improve their product, which is really, really great and commendable.
Mhm.
The good thing is really the like in the city of Philadelphia and Derry City as well, back in the northwest of Ireland, like they've got a really keen and eager customer base willing to try new things. So simple innovations like changing the menu, changing, like recipes for beers and for brews and so on. Those things are what really excite the customer side. But
Mhm.
with respect to the sector as a whole, like there hasn't been any real major innovations that have been as groundbreaking as AI will be for the corporate world, for example.
Mhm.
That doesn't apply because, Greg, when you go to a restaurant, you expect to be greeted by a person, not a robot or an iPad, which
Mhm.
is awful in airports, for example. And you expect to be treated, like with respect, and you expect to, like have an interaction with that individual serving, and you expect to have like the quality of your experience is dependent on that human interaction
Mhm. Mhm.
and also the quality of the product you
Mhm.
know, whether it be a meal, whether it be, like drink or whatever it may be.
Right. It's interesting. I'm involved with this organization I've shared with you, Skull International, and I had a
Mm,
conversation with the international president, and he's certainly an advocate for our industry finding more ways to be, efficient in terms of our our business. But he rests very strongly on the fact that we can never overlook the fact that we are human touch business,
mhm,
whatever we use for technology and whatever innovation, it should just help us to provide greater customer service and greater customer engagement. So
mhm,
I actually agree with that. All right, so I want to move to some questions that are very much centered around, your interest here in Philadelphia. So the first one I'm going to ask you is to tell us about Deary City, and then secondly, to follow it up, so Philadelphia and Deary City, we both have vibrant craft brewing scenes. So
mhm.
what it is about craft beer that makes it such a powerful cultural bridge between the two cities? But I think for our listeners, if you could give us a little bit more about Deary City, that would also help put it into perspective.
Yeah, Derry, founded in like 1604 as a port city. And then famously with all the battles, the Game of Thrones level battles
Mhm.
that were happening, like it became a walled city. They had to surround the town itself with with these massive fortifications
Mhm.
with cannons, like 360. So it became known as the walled city as a result, and those walls are still there, like they're walkable, like today. It grew, like being in the northwest of the province, like that's what we refer to Ulster as, like the province, is that all the investment tended to go towards the east, to Belfast, to the capital city up there. It's also geographically closer to the UK mainland and to Europe. So, like a lot of the investment went there. So, all the American companies that came over, they would be investing and they'd be situated in the Belfast area. So, like Derry, like was and the Northwest area was typically underinvested in over time. So, like because of that, they really, really honed in on their hospitality sector and festival culture as well. So it's got the biggest Halloween, festival in Europe. It's got an amazing maritime festival. Comes up in June because it's right on the Foyle River.
Mhm.
And like that's where the new initiative from the Foyle to Philly and from Philly to the Foyle,
Mhm.
like that's how we're sort of labeling the like connection between them. But what it has a lot in common with Philadelphia is itself as a sort of a like the second city of the area. The way here, New York is sort of everyone wants to go to New York, they want to invest in New York, and then
Mhm.
Philadelphia is sort of seen as the almost the poor cousin down the road. So Derry shares that sense of, hey, that doesn't sound pretty fair. We're we're damn good here.
Mhm.
So they got that little chip in your shoulder, which
Mhm.
is, like I'm like, which is good. Definitely, Philadelphians have that chip on their shoulder too. You did, like they're not going to welcome you in open arms. You've got to earn their trust and their respect, and that's something that's very common to Derry. It's a very, like foodie town as well, Derry, like which is Philly. It's very neighborhood
Mhm.
driven as well. People are very proud of the distinct neighborhoods in their city. So there's a lot in common, like, like between the two cities. But I love that they're both sort of port cities on a like on a major river,
Mhm.
like the Delaware and the Foyle. And obviously there's tremendous Irish roots here in Philadelphia as well. So many have come, left that port in Derry to come and actually settle, like in Philadelphia as well.
So it's interesting to look at the two cities and share what those cultural connections are. But if
Hmm.
I were to go a little bit further, how can this collaboration between the two go beyond what might be considered as some limited edition of beers and
Yeah.
create something that would be a lasting international partnership?
Yeah, well, I think like the broader vision for the Dairy Delphia thing. So like we're like the beer is going to be called Dairy Delphia, so we're just mixing those two together. But I think like the to establish brewer exchange programs and sort of joint apprenticeships. I think that's it. Like that's a critical thing. Gen Z now are like they're not putting down roots. Like they're not buying homes because they can't really afford them. So they
Mhm.
tend to spend most of their disposable income on travel and experiences
Mhm.
and so on. But also the college path is also something that they tend to be rejecting
Mhm.
as well and tend to be looking for more vocational sort of career paths.
Mhm.
Now, what I found here in Philadelphia, obviously, like the brewing sector and craft beer sector is just enormous. I think there's 200 like breweries just in the Philadelphia area alone, never mind broader PA. So that's starting to really take seed in the Northwest now because there's a lot of real quality and breweries popping up. So kids see it as a, like as a vocational career that doesn't put them in a suit and tie, doesn't put them behind a desk in a cubicle. It allows them to make money whilst creating something
Mhm.
and selling something and having the pride of that.
Mhm.
And I think so. Then, like back to the point then about the brewer exchanges is ultimately, like to make this about more than just a sort of limited edition beer,
Mhm.
is that we want this to be the catalyst and the sort of glue that is that helps establish those brewer exchange programs and apprenticeships. So bringing kids from the northwest area of Ireland over to Philadelphia to train with some of the wonderful master brewers and breweries over here, but also taking youth from the Philadelphia area and sending them back to the northwest of Ireland to immerse themselves in that culture, learn more, make contacts there, and
Mhm.
actually learn how they approach the same sort of profession over there.
So let me just add a kind of unexpected question, but would that mean that they could become a sommelier of beer?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what the term is for beer. Yeah, you're right, but yeah, that would be the yeah, that would like I guess like sommeliers they sort of t taste and they can divine what's like actually break down
Mhm,
like where it came from. Oh, it's from the Rhone Valley. It's from Russian River Valley in
mhm,
California, whatever it is.
mhm.
It's got the chocolatey notes and all that sort of good stuff. I'm not sure if they like do they go about that like brewers. Like I think they really yeah, there's definitely a specialty, like a
Mhm.
component to it for sure. I'm not sure you would ever see in a brewery though, like some of the nice restaurants here in Philadelphia.
Right.
Go to there's always a sommelier to ask, hey, I'm having this, like, and they will
Yeah.
be able to educate you. I've yet to see that in a brewery here.
Mm,
Hey, let me explain. But actually thinking about that as well, there are these breweries, Greg, that do the flights. So
mhm.
if you go in, they'll
Yes.
give
Yes.
4 or 6, and the person, telling you about them, they do have some really good insights that you would never think about. They're going, this is more on the bitter side. This is more on the stouty oaky side. So yeah, it is happening, but I just didn't notice it. So I will pay more attention in the future
Could
for sure.
be an interesting conversation as we
Yeah, it would.
talk about the kind of educational experience that could come out of it for individuals.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a really good insight. So I've learned something from this podcast already. So thank you.
So, in what ways can craft brewing act as a storytelling platform? And we know that storytelling has become such a valuable asset of guest experience, of defining destinations. So, how would that storytelling really help both cities to kind of share their histories connected to music, to food, and
Yeah.
generally their local identities?
Yeah, I think music's a big part of it, and also the sort of working class roots
Mm,
is something because, like in Ireland, that's why there's so many heavy bricked sort of bars as people would, like go in the, 100 years ago or more, and there'd be no TVs or sports or anything. So
mm,
they'd be just telling stories, and then they would be playing music. So like, like developing like the stories and understanding the histories of both sides, like of the Atlantic is a very important thing. Like just establishing those local identities with new international audiences, I think is a really, really the key thing. So like this collaboration could happen with that because any Philly kids going to Ireland, for example, they
mhm,
will eventually be, like in a brewery learning, but they'll be hearing the stories of how that brewery, like their philosophy, where it came from, like why they make decisions based on their upbringing,
mm,
based on some of the challenges that they faced growing up. And again, Derry was a very challenged city during the so-called Troubles in Ireland. It was heavily sort of fortified. The British Army were on the streets there. So like that sense of, like discord
mm.
has also, like molded the brewers of today, and to be able to share those types of stories, I think will be very enlightening for Philly kids. And let's face it, Philly, like it's been no picnic here. It's in a really good place now, but it's always been,
Mm.
like you've got to fight your way through in Philadelphia as well. So it's definitely got that shared. I'm not sure if trauma is the right word, but like certainly that shared grit.
Right.
Because like you can't grow up in Philadelphia being soft.
No, you can't. And I was actually going to say that yeah, I think the best definer of Philadelphia is the grit that most people have here.
Yeah.
It's pretty determined, and it is interesting that we do share a relationship between New York and DC, and maybe you know 30, 40 years ago it may not have been as easily defined in terms of Philadelphia's position, but we are the birthplace of democracy. We
Yeah,
were
that's right.
so I think Philadelphia has really kind of established its position amongst those. And that kind of takes me to the next question, because I think for any destination in a city like Philadelphia, that idea of how you constantly are able to further define the destination and
Yeah.
the ability to do it within the United States and international affiliations can be great. So, what are some of the things that you think would be very successful in a transatlantic craft beer exchange between Philadelphia and Deary?
I think it's like using those brewery spaces as sort of cultural hubs almost, like to host visiting artists, musicians, chefs, historians, anything to sort of deepen the narrative beyond the beer. I think it would be something that would be incredibly powerful. as I say, like the beer is the social sort of mechanism that brings people together.
Mm,
And then, like when you have people together, then that's when sort of, like pretty cool things can happen.
mm,
Like in terms of the creativity, in storytelling, understanding as well.
mm,
Like you asked earlier about what was my biggest, like who's my biggest competitor, right? No, if you're able to hear from, you know, people with more experience, the challenges that they face, that can help you, compete with yourself and get perspective on, okay, everyone's got challenges,
mm.
and we just have to, like navigate them the best way we can. But understanding what they are is really, really critical. So, like, I think, yeah, like being able to shine a sort of spotlight on each city's history, diaspora,
Mhm,
like creative communities.
mhm,
Like, like I see that as being the like the ultimate benefit from this, and whatever comes from that is
mhm,
hard to sort of pinpoint. But
mhm.
putting people into those creative environments, and educational environments, and historical environments, like will just help broaden their perspective in life.
Right. And I think there are stories that are just untold that have this
Yeah.
ability now to have a platform for it to be told through perhaps a medium that we hadn't really thought about before. All right, so Paul, this is a totally unrehearsed question, but based on all that we've talked about. So if you woke up on Monday morning and you got an email that gave you the green light across all channels of what you are trying to achieve with this transatlantic connection, what would that mean?
Oh, well, if you had, yeah, there's so many partners required to come in to make this happen, and I won't mention them here. I don't want to,
Mhm,
like, put anyone, like in the spotlight that doesn't
mhm,
need to be there. But like you can imagine, like cultural showcases, business networking events, integrated tourism packages, linking brewery trails with heritage tours like music, local markets. Like what I really like about this, I know like the potential is that it's yet unforeseen. Like we know what the sort of short and medium term success would look like. Is having the kids train, like really promoting and growing the craft beer culture in Ireland and in Philadelphia, connecting these two cities, like has just got tremendous upside. But once that happens, like and then the kids that come back from Ireland to Philly, who knows what they'll do? Like the kids that come from Ireland to Philly, who knows what they'll do from this or from the contacts that they meet. So I expect to see the like the fruits of the short and medium term really, really emerge
mhm.
down the road, maybe 5 or 10 years, or whatever. And that would be, like a legacy for the program. That would be something that's incredibly worthwhile.
Wow. Well, I am certainly optimistic through our contribution to tell your story through something to say that you're getting closer and closer to getting that email. So just be sure when you get it, you also send us an email and say, "Hey, Greg, guess what? It worked out well."
I
So
will. I
listen,
will.
I have one last question for you, but so far you haven't asked me what kind of beer that I drink.
Greg, what kind of beer do you drink?
It is so corny. I know it's going to sound so incredibly it's going to sound bad, but so I'm a Bud Light drinker.
Oh, that's
I like my beer on ice with a lime.
okay. Well, that like that's like the Bud Light was a bad start, but where you ended up, I go there as well. Because my girlfriend's half Mexican, and we spent like quite a bit of time down there. And they like our favorite drink
Uh-huh,
there, or when we're in California, is a chelada. Not the michelada, which is red, but a
uh-huh,
chelada is just cerveza,
uh-huh.
about a shot or two of fresh lime juice in the bottom, filled with ice. And there's nothing more refreshing in a hot day than a chelada.
Wow.
Uh, no, not a michelada because that's the red one with the
Uh-huh.
tomatoes.
Right.
But if you ask for a chilada, or if you look it up, it's just like sort of just lager beer,
Right.
like a Modelo, for example, or whatever, with about like a shot or two of fresh lime juice in the bottom, filled with ice. And you pour the beer on top of that, and it is so refreshing. So
Ah.
that's a like an old drink developed by the Mexican farmers who worked in the fields in the
Right.
heat and so on. That's how they would cool down between shifts or after shifts. Is the lime juice is critical for hydration,
Ah.
and for energy, and the ice obviously to keep it all cold. So yeah, apart from the Bud Light thing, I'm with you there 100%.
I know. I didn't want to talk about it too early in the interview because I kind of figured it wasn't exactly the most classic thing.
That's funny.
So listen, we have one last question, and it's really based upon our podcast. So we're entitled Something to Say. So what do you have to say?
Well, I'd like to express my gratitude, for your enthusiasm towards like the initiative that we're embarking on. And, I'd love to keep you in the loop as we go along, and maybe as we hit some success milestones, I'm sort of circle back with you and sort of, like give your listeners an update on that. But yeah, no, and listen, I also want to, express gratitude to the obdurate nature of Philadelphia in many ways, because it is a stubborn town to break through. Like LA, I've lived there, and it's very, very sort of, they're almost too effusive and welcoming.
Mhm.
New York's okay, you're typically amongst the Irish community there, so you can get things done. But Philly's skepticism is very, very, it sort of looks at you with a squint in the eye going, what's this all about? So it does actually make you have to think about things and develop persuasive arguments and actually bring the value proposition to the fore before Philly will embrace you. Now, thankfully it has, and we're moving forward. So you may not hear this from many, but thank you to the obdurate nature of Philadelphia and Philadelphians. Your skepticism is appreciated. It made me better.
Well, I will tell you that there certainly has been skepticism at a lot of what is now considered some of Philadelphia's most successful collaborations. So I would say stick with it. And more importantly, I would like to thank you so much for coming on Something to Say and sharing your insights. Your words are truly very informative and are at the core of what we like to consider to be the value of Something to Say. So it has been a pleasure to interview you. Thank you for joining us today.
Greg, thanks for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we can get a chilada soon in the spring.
I'm gonna try. I gotta find my local Mexican restaurant though. So, audience, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Something to Say. We encourage you to stay tuned for more inspiring conversations with voices of individuals from diverse backgrounds, sharing their passion. So until next time, this has been Greg DeShields.
Thank you for tuning in to Something to Say. We trust you found some valuable insights and takeaways that can help you find your passion. Don't miss out on future episodes. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on your preferred platform. We value your feedback and suggestions, so let us know how we can serve you better. Keep the conversation going and stay inspired until we meet again. Take care and happy listening.